Chapter 55 Pumpkins, Puppets, and Princesses. Bela. Bela laughed breathily when Hagrid's massive arms encircled her, picking her off the ground in a bear hug and making her feel a lass of 9 years old, come down to train with the dragons. He was a man of immense strength, a colossal whose towering appearance intimidated even the boldest knights, yet sweet as summer towards anyone who treated him fairly. Hagrid placed her carefully down on her feet, his dark eyes crinkling in a smile. His bushy beard remained as untamed as always, but he'd made an effort to pull the rest back in a string at the nape of his neck.
I'm so glad to see you, Bela. It's been far too long. You need to visit us more often. I'm real happy you could make it.
Thank you, Hagrid. The weariness of her flight and travel shut off. The excitement to see her friends chased it away without a trace, and she was stunned by everything they'd accomplished here too. It looked startling from a distance on Dragonback, and even more unreal to stand atop it. To feel the evenly cut blocks of stone under her hand, the smooth walls and the solidity, the waterfall and the bridge. This was breathtaking, and accomplished so fast. She'd always known their magic had great potential, but this was beyond what Bela dreamt possible. I'll do my best not to let it be so long again.
How are you?
I'm faring well, Hagrid.
Rubbish, of course you're not, Hagrid said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. But since you're in such a bind, are they treating you right? I've been dead worried about you.
A tightness knotted in her throat, which she forcibly swallowed down. Why was it so easy for Hagrid to say the obvious? Bela had too, but would only ever be hushed or told she was imagining things. It's nothing I can't handle, Hagrid, Bela said, unsure which of them she was trying to fool. One of the tall double doors swung open, and a black-haired young woman waddled out with urgent haste. You made it! Where Hagrid remained unchanged, Ariel had seen quite a bit of differences. Bela knew she was with child. Bela knew. Yet somehow the changes in the lean and willowy witch was still unexpected all the same. Oh, Bela said. Look at you, Ariel. The growing babe gave Ariel a pronounced stomach, curvier hips, and she suddenly had a bust too, compared to how flat she used to be. Despite being noticeably heavier, Ariel seemed in good health too, bright-eyed and upbeat, but Bela thought similar of anyone who was able to keep smiling whilst in Eamon's company. Perhaps it was a matter of practice. Where she'd once would have come right up to Bela, awaiting a welcoming hug, Ariel halted a couple steps away, held at bay by the lingering hesitation in the air. You got tall, Ariel remarked. They now stood eye to eye. You got fat, Bela blurted, serving an uncooked dish of verbal spew, and then instantly wished the ground would swallow her whole, anything to distract from what she just said. Hagrid's eyebrows rose nearly to his hairline, and Ariel blinked. That was so... Why did she... Who said that as a greeting to an estranged friend after ages of silence? Who said something that witless to any woman carrying a babe? Bela did, apparently. She had been around Aegon too much. Bela stuttered, unable to think of a way to undo the words. But then... Ariel burst out laughing, startled but bubbly and familiar. Her laughter brought back memories of afternoons riding on Dragonstone, of mornings they ran away from Septa Mega to search the beaches for pretty shells and explore caves after forgotten dragon eggs, of bright days before duties and politics yanked them in different directions, before laughter became yet another controlled response, more often associated with mockery than joy. Ariel still knew her then, and Bela knew her. The relief was instant. With a sheepish lilt to her smile, Bela rushed forward, engulfing Ariel in a hug. Oh. Ariel returned the embrace. It's good to see you too, Bela. Astride Moondancer's swift wings, Bella reached Castle Point well ahead of the king's party. It granted her a private greeting, made all the sweeter because Aemond hadn't bothered the show to ruin the mood. Ariel and Hagrid welcomed her warmly. After the first stilted moment, the last year of distance washed away, leaving behind just Ariel and Bella. The bones of them, with their inside jokes and shared history. Hagrid and Ariel's easy affections and quick acceptance in their fold was like slipping into another skin. Not another person, but another version of herself that had been less knowledgeable, but more true to herself. Even pregnant, married, and lady of her own keep, in a role that didn't quite suit her, Bella could see Ariel there. No courtly masks or ulterior motives, because she'd gotten to know her before such disguises became a necessity. As Ariel showed her around her new home, she seemed genuinely chipper and eager to fit Bella into her new life. Bella lowered her shoulders and simply breathed in. It wasn't like flying, not a rush or excitement, but it was still a freeing place to be. This new home of Hagrid and Ariel. Behind all the magic and glamour, she found a familial warmth. Bella wasn't only welcomed here, she felt wanted. There were quite a few out and about, making last preparations before the royal retinue arrived. As they strolled through the magical castle, Ariel told little tales about why something was the way it looked, or some funny tangent about how it came to be. Though before long, both Hagrid and Ariel were called away to attend to something urgent. Instead it was Eliza, the familiar face from Dragonstone where she'd served as Ariel's maid, who finished the tour for her. She was no longer the handmaid though. "You're the steward of the point?" Bella asked, confused. "Yes, I've been greatly honored by the station, Lady Bella," Eliza replied demurely, but straight-backed and proper. Her silver hair was combed back, and she wore a deep auburn gown in velvet with the stars of House Hagrid along the skirt. Hadn't Bella known her face from years on Dragonstone, she may have mistaken Eliza for a noble. "But you're a woman," Bella pointed out the obvious, or one of them. The maid may not have been a street rat or anything, but Eliza wasn't the child of some knight or high-ranking staff either, merely a cook's daughter. The jumped-up maid nodded. "It's because of the magic. This castle doesn't quite work like any other we know of, and it can get overwhelming for those who've not been around magic as long as I have. As you too, my lady. Though there's many more deserving, especially amongst the men of Prince Aemond's retinue, nearly none of the ones who've moved here in the last few moons are as familiar with Lady Ariel and Lord Rubius's magic as I am. They requested I fill the duty as their steward, and I am honored to serve them." It seemed contradictory to rise a low-born woman to steward of such a place. She knew some people, likely a lot of them, would resent that, and find both Eliza's sex and birth unsuitable. Mayhaps take it as an insult to every candidate that it'd be more deserving but passed over. Envy so often led down similar paths, Bella found the likely outcome glaringly predictable. Though, having a well-running castle was the duty of any steward, and it seemed Eliza had it in hand. Bella certainly couldn't point to any glaring faults, and it occurred to her that whatever Eliza lacked, she made up for in loyalty. Perhaps the appointment made its own kind of sense. All the same, Bella would have preferred to talk more with Ariel, but the witch simply didn't have time. As the Lady of the Point preparing the castle to entertain the royal party, she hardly had a moment to sit. So Bella spent the remains of the day waiting for her husband, exploring around the Point and the Fangs and settling in. Throughout the following day, Bella still struggled to get a moment alone with Ariel, and had to settle with sharing. Between seeing to Aegon and exploring the castle, she watched Ariel attempt to uphold every single commitment simultaneously. Being the Lady of the Point, how she handled being part of the royal family in an official setting, whilst juggling being in charge of a visit from the royal court, all the while heavily pregnant. It came with larger and minor challenges. From the needs of the visiting dragons to the logistics of fitting the party to the comforts of her guests. As the lady, it was Ariel's duty to see everyone's needs met, from Lord Beesbury requiring to start his day with a servant bringing him a specific type of herbal tea precisely at sunrise, and ending his days with warmed honeyed goat milk served an hour before sunset, to Lord Tyland's complaints of poor sleep because his chambers had morning sun, which woke him too early. She arranged to have him switched with Lord Jasper Wilde, and then there was an argument regarding which lords may have been given to smallest chamber. Lord Jasper's fourth wife was with child too, which would be the Lord's number 26th child. Harold had initially roomed them together, only to have a furious Lady Wilde demanding a separate room on the other side of the castle. Bewildered, Harold had made the accommodations, looking increasingly stressed. Bella would need to take her aside later and explain there was little more she could do for her. Lady Wilde was not angry at the accommodations, but brought low after recently learning her husband's mistress was with child too, Lord Jasper's 27th, and expected to give birth nearly at the exact same time she would. She was also coordinating Eamon's name day feast, and had staff running up to her for instructions, and that was beside her everyday running of the keep and grounds. Harold took most of it in stride, her patience lasting all the way until noon, though Bela felt rather vindicated when it was neither guest, dragon, or petty lordly squabble that broke her patience, but the Queen's poking. Eamon's name day feast would be held in a few hours, and Harold had invited some of the ladies for a walk around the Godswood and Bailey. Bela ended up spending the walk exploring the waterfall and forest with Grace, all the while listening in as the Queen tried and failed to talk sense into Hariel. Hariel hummed, initially holding her composure after the Queen not so subtly brought up the importance of picking the right name for a Targaryen babe. "I would like to use the name James, after my father," Hariel explained with strained patience. "It's not Valyrian, but it's got a long history back home. Perhaps no royal in Westeros have held the name, but there was once a King James in my homelands." Bella followed in their wake with Grace Wilde, who needed to get away from her own brand of family drama. The Queen's smile remained kind, if slightly belittling. "That's an understandable desire." The Queen actually matched her good daughter's strained patience there. Bella had an inkling this wouldn't go in her favor, but also enjoyed the novelty. It was refreshing it wasn't her being subjected to those disapproving glances from the Queen. It seemed the Queen merely liked to nag at her good daughters for sports. Nothing was ever good enough for her sons. "But that was in your homelands, and this is Westeros," Alicent said. "Surely you can hear it's too foreign a choice for a Targaryen prince." "I am foreign. The child will be half foreign, half British," Hariel said plainly, unwilling to put a polite spin on it. "At least with a name like James, no one will mistake them for someone else." "I see," Alicent sighed. "What if it's a girl?" "Lily, after my mother." Bella could feel the remaining patience dwindle behind the Queen's fixed smile. "Hariel, please consider what you're pushing for. Your father must have been a good man, but to reuse his name for a child of Aemon will make them appear disconnected from his Targaryen ancestry. It's a disservice to them." "What of Lily, then?" "Lily is..." The Queen gave a heavy exhale. "It sounds like the name of a blacksmith's daughter, Hariel." "And what's wrong with that? Girl or boy, and regardless of first name, the only thing that's certain is that their family name is going to be Targaryen," Hariel said obstinately. "They will grow up in Westeros in the ways of the people with the name Targaryen, titles and all that includes. Is it truly such a big request they are allowed to remember there's more to them, that they are as much of my blood as his?" Alicent looked down. "I understand it matters to you, but in daily life those names are doing them no favors, Hariel. Think of the babe. Is this for your sake or theirs? For their future or for your pleasure? You think you are showing them love, but what you're giving them is an obstacle. And what of Aemond? Why should your parents be honored first, even ahead of his own line?" "Because everything else is from his side of the family," Hariel said. "This one thing comes from mine. You shouldn't oppose it." You think my son is being unreasonable to have an opinion about the name of his own child?" a name he'll have to use for the rest of his life, or theirs. Tell me, would you oppose Aemond if he desires to name a child Viserys, or Alicent, after his parents? Would that offend you too? Hariel's mouth opened and snapped closed with a click. Now how would Hariel wriggle out of that one? She couldn't argue the logic without directly calling the Queen's name lesser, to her face. It was a treacherous path, this verbal battlefield they'd just been navigated onto by the Queen's question, and all too easily fallen off. It's not the same. They are excellent names too, Your Grace, but I prefer to avoid further confusion. Hariel cleared her throat. 3 Viseryses within the same family is too many. King Viserys and Prince Viserys are already using that name. Alicent is truly a beautiful name too, but you still hold it, my queen. Whilst my mother is dead, and I have barely a finger for her anymore, as I lost nearly all of my belongings during our travels from Britain. Not a dress, not a letter, nor jewelry. Aemond has uncountable sentimental belongings he can pass on to our child. Even better, on Aemond's side, our child will know who their family is. They will never need to be reminded of their dragon blood. But all I have of my mother is her name to pass on. I literally have nothing else of her. But if I'd be so fortunate as to have a daughter, I'd like to give them that. A connection. Baela smirked and glanced to Grace. Initially, she seemed as exasperated as the Queen, but throughout Hariel's explanation it turned to soft compassion, feeling sympathy for Hariel instead. It was well argued, Baela thought. Of all the comebacks, how on earth was the Queen supposed to argue against a daughter's sentimentality for their dead mother? It would be hard to argue, especially in their current company. Everyone present was a daughter who'd lost their mother. Alicent sighed and reached out, taking Hariel's hand. She didn't ask permission or give much warning of the sudden contact, so Hariel looked a startled doe as the Queen pulled her closer by the hands. But what could she do but follow along? Let me give you a piece of advice, Hariel, from mother to mother. All that matters is that they're your child, which is a bond neither name nor birth can break. But it can be so for a father, the Queen said. Their name will make a difference in the long run, because sometimes a father needs some help, a little nudge. Unlike you, they haven't felt their child grow in their womb. Upon birth, they are presented with a stranger, no different than most other babes. It cries, it poops, it vomits, it's frail, and it seeks its mother first for survival, not the father. It can be hard for some fathers, and they may need some time to get to know their child and form a connection. It's not amiss to aid them along the way, is it? What if the babe is unfortunate enough to not favor his looks in the slightest? He'll look at the babe in his arms, and though an innocent, it may as well be someone else's. Then you'd also insist on giving them a foreign name? At the very least, if the babe's name is something Aemond feels attachment to, his affection for the name will help him bond with the child. Hariel's eyes hardened, and she pulled her hands away from the Queen. Baela watched closely, her stomach going tight. Snubbing the Queen here would not go well for Hariel. That was her good mother. She may not live in her castle, but it was still the Queen. But that didn't happen. Instead, Hariel merely adjusted to hold around. The witch wrapped her hands around the Queen's empty ones, switching the grips on its head and cupping the older woman's hands within hers. We disagree there, my Queen. I won't speak for other men and fathers. I do understand what you're worried over, so please don't think I don't value your counsel. But Aemond's? No. Hariel squeezed the Queen's hands reassuringly. Even if our babe comes out looking my twin with not a trace of Valyrian in them, and I named them the most foreign name of them all, I believe Aemond will not let himself be rebuffed by such shallow trappings. Hariel pursed her lips. I know he'll love his child. The Queen stared at her hands and exhaled audibly, but curiously she didn't break away, the silence holding the tension at knife point. When she looked up at her good daughter, the facade of polite smiles and perfection faded then, and she spoke with a distinct wariness. Your faith in my son moves me, Ariel, which is why it gives me no pleasure to break your confidence. But in this instance, regarding this topic, your faith is misplaced. Aemond was the one to bring this up to me as a grievance. He's not pleased. I know. It's his child. I am all those things you just said he'd reject. Foreign features, carrying a foreign name whom everyone knows is not a native. But he found it in him to love me, just as I love him, Ariel said. Though you do have a point. It took Aemond time to adjust to me when we met too, so I'll keep that in mind after our child is born. Otherwise though, I'm not worried, Your Grace. Aemond's not met his child yet, and the fact he's given me so much trouble about what to name them is because he cares. Personally, I'd be more worried if he didn't have an opinion. For him, did it mean he truly didn't care? There's much I worry about, but his affections for our child will never be one of them. We will be fine. With a sigh, the Queen gave up. Bela wasn't confident it was a permanent state of affair though. She'd conceded the battle to Ariel, but she may strike again. As for Bela, she found herself at odds. For Ariel's sake, she wanted her friend to be right, and Bela especially wanted the Queen to be wrong. But this was one of those instances where their good mother may be right. Ariel was too secluded. Bela herself would certainly never name a royal child either James or Lily. She understood why Ariel wished to, but she also worried how that would turn out for the babe with such names. The Queen may be seeing the bigger picture in ways the witch was too sentimental to accept. For all appearances' sake, Ariel handled the Queen rather well, and outwardly she seemed calm. That impression was rectified once the Queen was out of earshot and Grace went to get ready for the feast. Bela intended to do the same, but had escorted Ariel down to her apartments first. She was so pregnant, her balance off, and Bela worried she'd trip. However, the moment the door closed, Ariel turned to Bela, her expression miffed. Can you believe her? The Queen saying those things to me? Bela smirked. It is her grandchild. She should thank me! She doesn't know what options I've contended with! Aemond wanted to name the babe Vermithor! Bela's mouth opened in a perfect O. No, she denied, even as her face broke into a grin. He truly is a twat! That'd be so bewildering for everyone, with the way he cuddles his dragon. It would get so confusing whom he was referring to, his dragon or his child. That's what I said! Ariel agreed heatedly, gesturing to Bela energetically. Because that's not what would happen, is it? To know whether anyone was talking of the dragon or the babe, one would have to be given a pet name. And since Vermithor has had the name for over a century, the child would end up with one. A shortening of Vermithor. It would probably end up being called Verm, and before you know it, the mean children try calling them Worm or Vermin. It's cruel. We'd be setting them up for ridicule. No, oh 7 hells, no. Bela grimaced. That'd be a terrible name. Not as much of a nightmare as Vermithora, you know, if it's a girl, Ariel muttered sourly. Bela broke into a full laughter. That's so cruel! What father would inflict such on their little daughter? What did the babe do to offend him already? I thought he loved them. That's the issue though. It is out of love. Aemond doesn't hear it. Ariel sighed. He thinks Vermithor is the most beautiful name there's ever been. That there's no higher honor. Granted, even he acknowledges it's more of a male name, yet Aemond thinks it's beautiful regardless, even as it sounds more akin to a burst of screeching flutes in mine. So he's going to name them that? Bela asked, disbelieving. If you have a son? No, Ariel sighed, her shoulders dropping. Even he couldn't claim Worm or Vermin wasn't the likely outcome there, though he tried suggesting a pet name like Thor, but I was able to talk him down. Aemond already has a dragon named Vermivore. That should be good enough. Let the dragon keep his name. Let the dragon be the dragon and our child be the child. And for good measure, I put my foot down on calling people a name already in use within the family. It gets so bloody confusing. Now though, he's insisting on Jaehaerys instead, or Alysanne. Thank the Seven. Bella shook her head, but realized her own relief wasn't quite shared with the impending mother. What? She asked. You must agree both Jaehaerys and Alysanne are better options than Vermivore. I guess, Harrell allowed. I want to name them James or Lily. I heard. It's better than Vermivore. It is, Bella agreed. I just feel I'm carrying it. And they're going to be so very Targaryen. Living in Westeros, Targaryen name, royal title. Harrell's jaw tightened, which sparked Bella's attention. How queer. She didn't like that her child was granted royal titles? Surely not. It was the greatest honor. Harrell couldn't be such a fool as to think it was preferable to be snubbed of it. Like Bella had been. Bella was only a lady because she'd inherited her father's disinheritance. The king hadn't stripped her father of his royal title. He remained a prince, but he'd been removed from the line of succession. Disinherited. Through him, Bella and Rhaena were no longer in line either, and were denied the princess titles to make that clear to Westeros at large. When she and Aegon had a child though, they would be granted such through their father. One day her child would outrank her, and Harriel was in the same situation too. She was but a lady, carrying a prince or princess. Though Harriel had never been snubbed of a title she was owed by blood. Snubbed twice, on both her mother's side and then again on her father's side, over some spat that didn't hold weight anymore. Her father married himself back into his lost station, and his youngest daughter received royal station through her mother now, whilst Bella and Rhaena kept getting snubbed, like always. But it's my child, Harriel muttered. Aemond can have the title and the house name. I just want the first name. It's his child, possibly his heir, Bella corrected her. You're birthing a member of House Targaryen. Regardless of your intentions and wishes, from the instant your child is born, their every action will reflect on the head of the house, on the king himself. I doubt the king will try to put his nose into this naming situation and pick one for himself, but do not be surprised if he denies a forename like James for his grandchild. It's not suitable for a royal Targaryen when it breaks too far from tradition. He can do that? Of course, Bella said. But it's my child. He's your king. It's a child of the realm, Harriel. It's your child, but it's the king's grandchild. You bent the knee and married into his house, Harriel. You made your bed, in Aemond's bed, and now you have to sleep in it. Your child will forever be firstly a Targaryen, a representative of us, of the dragons. The house is only as strong as the weakest member, but would you want that weakest link to be your child? Even as a lady and not a princess, I have always known my actions reflected on my house. You know the king has a claim to all things in Westeros, from every pebble in the roads and leaves on the trees, to every child. He can order marriages, order life and death. He grants lands and titles, of which Hagrid is a benefactor. All this is because you remain in his good grace, but naming a member of his house James is not something I see him approve of. But you don't understand. It's my parents, my only... I do though, Bella cut her off, because you could tell from Harrel's tone exactly what she meant. I do. If Aegon and I ever have a daughter, I will name her Lena. You can't say I don't know why it matters. I know exactly how you feel. I may wish it was different for you, and this wouldn't have been such an issue if you married a knight or some minor lord. but not the royal family, Ariel. Do you understand the scrutiny they'll be faced with? Lily isn't too bad. It's common, a small folk name more than that of a lady, but it's not foreign. James is though. Everyone at court will cause judgment. You know what you just said regarding the way Ament was setting your child up for ridicule with the name Vermivore? This isn't too different. You just can't hear it. Because to you, it's the most beautiful name in the world. But it's different here. You think James is an ugly name? She asked, hurt. No, I don't. But I've been hearing that name since I was 8. I got used to it early. Bella shrugged. I'm merely making the situation clear for you. The implications. If you are able to get your way, know you're not making it easier for your child to survive court. They won't grow up at court, Ariel said quietly. They'll grow up here, in their home, safe and away from court. That can be both a blessing and a curse. It'll spare them the daily scrutiny, but they will always be royal regardless of where they grow up. And by keeping them away, none will be able to grow fond of them either, to get to know them enough to see past the name. Take it from someone who did not grow up there but is now stuck there anyway, Bella said dryly. Ariel frowned. It's hard? Yes, she admitted. But I'm handling it. Though even with a perfectly fitting name in honor of my grandsire Balon, impeccable lineage and a dragon rider, it's not enough. I'm not sure anything is, Ariel. But if my father named me Beffa instead of Bela, that would be another thing I'd have to contend with. Honestly, I'm relieved I was spared that. But know whilst your child would likely have it easier here at home, the unfamiliarity with the ways and people of court will make it 10 times worse whenever they show up there. They be the relative with a strange name that's not like the rest. Is that what you want? For your child to be the outsider of their own house? Pardon, but Rhaenyra's also raising her family away from court, which is why most of King's Landing is now comfortably calling her sons the Strong Boys, Ariel. Bella said sharply. It was Ariel's turn to be startled now. Still? More than ever. No small part because she and her sons are not there. After Luke was disinherited, it got particularly bad. I don't know what she's thinking. It was such a foolish choice to return to Dragonstone. She's accomplished nothing but losing standing and allies and leaving courtiers to make their own assumptions. It looked like she's hiding. At least Aemond knows to make regular visits, even if he lives here at the Point. He still has a dragon, ships. There's nothing stopping him, and he doesn't let it. If anything, he's strengthened his standing at court despite moving. He knows to come back and make sure everyone knows exactly what he's been accomplishing whilst away. With this invitation, he's now proven the validity of his tall tales too. Bella peered around the room. It had not been bragging. He may have actually not have bragged enough. Whilst Rhaenyra doesn't do that, she's just gone, and it doesn't discourage the assumptions or deter the rumors, Ariel. The game keeps playing without her. She should be at court more, but that's another topic entirely. So you... Ariel said awkwardly, and then cleared her throat, gaining strength. You think I shouldn't honor my parents? You agree with Aemond. Miracles do happen, Bella mused. I can't even have that much, huh? That's not what I mean, Ariel. Can't you agree on an option that's more reasonable? So it's only about what Aemond wants. He gets... Fuck what Aemond wants, Bella corrected. His preferences are relevant to me, but I can admit his pick of names stand a better chance of making your child's life easier than what you want for them. The child is the one who will be left living with it, not you or your husband. I am fortunate that my mother had a Valyrian name, so honoring her will not have the potential to make my daughter's life more challenging than it's already going to be, growing up at court as they'll be. Bella shook her head. They're vipers, Ariel. Ruthless vipers that will strike at any perceived weakness. And I can't help worry such names will make for an easy target. Is it truly something you can't do without? Will you love them any less with a different name? No! Ariel exclaimed. Of course I won't. I thought so. The name won't truly change how you feel about your child. You will love them regardless of if they're named James or Jaehaerys or Alicent or even Vermifora. But others may not. It won't change how you love them, but the name will change how others love them. Especially if your hunch is right, and they'll favor your features ahead of Aemond. Ariel rubbed her swollen stomach, absently straightening out the creases on her gown with brows furrowed in thought. The sadness made Bella feel a sting of guilt. She didn't wish to hurt her, but she wouldn't do her the disservice of lying about it either. It's just how things worked. I don't want him to feel like an outsider, she said. I want him to belong. It's terrible to not belong anywhere. Ariel shook her head. Now I wish they'd take more after him. They might, Bella said, wondering why on earth she was so convinced they'd look like her. The queen had thick, dark red hair, but 4 undeniably Valyrian children. But then there were Rhaenyra's children, most except Visenya looking a mirror of their father. In other situations, a strong resemblance to their father would be considered a good thing, a lucky chance. But not when Bella's stepmother was attempting to pass them off as another man's children. It was almost like the gods were trying to tell her something. Though if the babe looks like you, they may not look Valyrian, but at least they'll be pretty. Ariel smiled weakly. Aemond is handsome. Is he? Bella asked vaguely, wrinkling her nose in distaste while quietly wondering whether Ariel may be struggling with failing eyesight. Careful, Bella, Ariel warned sharply. You're towing the line of insinuating my babe won't be cute. Bella smiled innocently, batting her eyes so the light would catch the violet hue. I'd never. That was a cardinal error even a Lackwit knew not to cross. Even if a woman was rocking what looked like a goblin mutant to sleep, you did not call their baby ugly. Not unless you wanted to start a blood feud. You better, Ariel said. Or I'll name my ugly babe Lena. No! The mask slipped off and Bella gasped. That's mine! You can't take my name! I said it first! Ariel laughed. I'm having a child first! That's not fair! She protested, not certain that was true. Bella had married first. Ariel wasn't early at all. She was roughly 9 moons behind the schedule from what most of court had expected, and Bella was even later. Besides, Aemond would never agree to that. Ha! Don't be so sure, the witch mused. He'd be relieved I came with some Valyrian options, and he got along well with Sir Laenor. Unburnt brothers and all that. What is Lena but a female form of Laenor? Bella's blood ran cold. Oh. But... I'm jesting, Ariel chuckled. Lena is a beautiful name, but I wouldn't take your mother's name. I'm not that petty. Even if you called my babe ugly. I didn't call them ugly. She stuck out her tongue in an immature gesture she hadn't done in years. Bella relaxed, relieved she took it with good humor. She reminded herself not to mention Lena as an option in the vicinity of Ariel's husband though, because Aemond very well might be that petty. Aemond's coming-of-age name day ended with an obligatory feast Bella attended in good spirits. Who would have guessed it possible? Whilst Ariel and Aemond were stuck having to entertain the king queen in hand, Bella was seated just a little down the table near Hagrid, and Aegon was in a great mood too. With hair combed and dressed in his golden pink set she'd made him, Aegon talked her ear off. He could not stop chatting about the new leg Hagrid had fitted him, and Bella was swept up in his exuberance. Hagrid's approach to make Aegon fly wasn't any adjustments to the saddle. What the maesters had already done worked well, but instead he changed Aegon's leg. At a glance, it appeared an illogical thing, as the leg was no leg at all, not designed to walk, but a hook attached to a stump. With that attached, it allowed Aegon to grip the rope ladder to Sunfire's saddle with the hook, and climb with more control both up and down. Her husband talked so much, gesticulating as he recreated his entire day in hand gestures, that he quite forgot to drink his wine.
I'll need to fit my other leg to the saddle, somewhere it can be brought along without risk of falling off, but accessible enough so I can grab it whenever I disembark. But that's a minor adjustment. Sunfire and I flew today, Bela. I flew! 7 hells, I thought I'd never again. It was fantastic, and Sunfire was magnificent,
Aegon said, eyes shining and a breathy relief in his voice. Bela reached out, taking his hand before he waved the flagon over in his eagerness. Aegon drew her hand in and pressed her fingers against his lips in a kiss.
Once my leg is properly fitted to the saddle, we can fly elsewhere too, he gushed. Not just home to the Red Keep, but to the Reach, maybe to Highgarden or Old Town.
Aegon trailed off as if he found a fault with those suggestions.
Though why bestow those grey bookish shreds of the Citadel with our company? It'd be terribly drab. No, let's fly further. We can fly to Pentos, to those places you talked of.
We could! The mere idea made Bela nearly jump in her seat. I'd show you the promenade. It's so busy. And the bazaar. You could pick kiwis straight off the trees for yourself. So fresh and bittersweet, it tickles the tongue. You'll love them, Aegon. I can show you Prince Regio's mansion too. Bela laughed. This was big. For the first time, there was a viable, workable plan which meant Aegon wasn't bound to assistance from a second person to fly his own dragon. It meant more still. It meant freedom for her too. The feast carried on, with rich foods and plenty of drinks. There were dancers and music, and it seemed most of the inhabitants of the Point and the Fang were in attendance too. The Queen rose and congratulated Aemond on his 6th and 10th name day, and the many achievements he'd accomplished. Our second son was already an excellent swordsman, well studied in law and history, fluent in 2 tongues, rider of the dragon Vermivor, married with a child soon to be born. His efforts and progress at Port Point, Castle Point and the Dragon Point. She listed it all, smiling brilliantly as she made clear how very perfect her son was. The hall at large received the Queen's words as touching, like a proud and loving mother. But Bela didn't miss the side-eye towards Aegon at the end, wordlessly punctuating how short he fell in comparison. Look how much your younger brother has accomplished. Now what use are you, the elder? The king went next, spending the majority of his toast talking of what a marvel he found Castle Point to be, more than his son's involvement with it, but brought matters back on course towards the end. King Viserys gestured the Lord Commander of the King's Guard forwards, and proceeded by insisting on a knighting. Aemond didn't straighten in his seat. His posture was already too perfect for such a reaction. But Bela noted he did go very, very still. An excited Hariel had grabbed his hand and leaned up to kiss his cheek, which brought him to act. With his wife ushering him along, the prince rose to follow Sir Harold Westerling to the middle of the Great Hall, where Aemond bent his knee whilst everyone craned their necks to watch the squireship end. Bela glanced away when Aegon reached for a goblet, avoiding her eye. On the floor, Sir Harold placed the sword to Aemond's left shoulder and started the proceedings. Prince Aemond of House Targaryen, in the name of the warrior, I charge you to be brave. In the name of the father, I charge you to be just. In the name of the mother, I charge you to defend the young and innocent. In the name of the maid, I charge you to protect all women. Aegon had nearly emptied his wine goblet by the time Aemond rose a knight. Aemond was smiling, an expression Bela found utterly wrong on someone so dour, but he turned first to a beaming Hariel, who was competing with Haggard about hooting and clapping loudest amongst the crowd. Ugh, it was almost sweet. Aemond swaggered to his seat with an infuriating smirk, and she could just tell he'd be absolutely insufferable for the foreseeable future. So Bela turned to Aegon. Knight he may be, but it will never grant him good tastes. Did you know your brother suggested naming his child Vermifora? Startled, Aegon snorted right into his cup, the liquid bubbling up into his face. What? He snickered, a gleefully evil smile coming over his face. Bella nodded. Harry was spitting fire about it earlier. Not that she's got room to talk. James. Honestly, if they weren't constantly bickering with one another, one could almost think they're perfect for each other. Aegon broke into silly little giggles. Preferably, the distraction could have worked a little better, but she thought it could have been worse too. She pulled Hagrid into a talk about the hooked leg again, which was too fresh for it to have no effect on her husband, and the best thing she could have done. Hagrid had some more ideas. Not to fly better, but to walk better.
We'll need to talk tomorrow. Has to be then, not now. Too many cups for spells tonight.
Hagrid gestured to his goblet.
Don't drink all tipsy, as they say. Don't brew with beer, no charming with champagne. That's how you end up accidentally charming your skin blue. Or get yourself splinched on your way home from the tavern. But I think I can make your wooden leg better. And Harriel has thought of it more still. She's real good at charms. Has her mother's talent. Lily was such a vivacious witch. Did you see her portrait down in the Fangs? Of her and James. Best witch and wizard their age.
Now that got Aegon's attention. Not Harold's parents' portrait Hagrid went on a tangent about, but the part about his leg. With the attention drifting away from Aemond and back on general fun, merriment and possible further improvements to his condition, Aegon calmed down. He'd seemed about to empty the whole flagon earlier, merely to better ignore the world and be happy. But with Aegon, the happier he got, the more he drank. So calm was usually the best Bella could ask of him. A hard ask when there was so much present he'd rather ignore, whilst trapped in his little brother's castle, celebrating all the achievements the elder brother had yet to reach, which he'd never reach. But Hagrid's distraction held. Though a little later, Bella peered down the table to where Harry was about to fall asleep. Her eyes kept drooping whilst her husband was in discussion with the Hand and the Queen.
It's only to be expected,
Aegon quipped, noting where her attention was and rolling his eyes.
I usually fall asleep listening to their droning too.
On the other side of her husband, Hagrid burst out laughing. With red cheeks from his many cups, Hagrid shook his head.
Nah, it's 'cause of the babe, Aegon. It could come any day now, and it makes her real tired, he said, still chortling.
Aegon beamed back at Hagrid, reaching out as if to grab his shoulder, but it was too high, so he settled for hitting him on the back jovially.
Ah, sounds like the babe was given the good sense to sleep through their father's chronic headroom too then. Must be Mykin in her belly. Wench, do refill the goblet for this finest dragon lord, the rider of Vagar, sorcerer of saddles and hexer of hooked legs, courtesy of Prince Aegon.
Hagrid flushed beet red, more than he already was, his eyes falling towards his beard abashed.
You're very kind, but you know I don't really ride her, right?
Bella smiled ruefully. Aegon was trying to make Hagrid like him. The successful dragonflight had changed his perspective, and he seemed grateful to Hagrid for the solutions. But still, it took too little to flatter Hagrid sometimes, less still when he was in his cups.
Promise the king and all I wouldn't fly, and I won't. Flying a dragon always makes me terribly sick. Shoot all over the place, not a pretty sight. Ask Almond, mostly I just scrub her wings. The old wounds and tears got itchy for her, and she enjoys the forest around here. Makes for a softer bed to nap on than the rocky beaches of Dragonstone. Less sand getting everywhere too. She misses the heat of the volcano, but I know how to compensate for that. And Almond's not that mumbling. No, I get it now. You're actually a pretty decent bloke, aren't you? I didn't know how much you love dragons, Aegon, but you clearly do. 'Cause Sunburn loves you. No, wait, that's not his name? Sorry, I mean Sunfire. But I saw that today. Your bond, he just adores you.
Bela was left shaking in her seat with stifled laughter. His accent had become as thick as a gravy, and his translation mishaps kept sending her into another spiral of laughter. Hagrid was in that state of drunkenness where his mind was a step too slow to keep up, and also becoming emotionally too earnest for what polite society expected of a man that could bend swords with his bare hands. He was catching the jokes a beat too late, but Aegon didn't seem to mind in the slightest. He was listening amused to his new favorite person. Chuckling at the amused back and forth between Aegon and the giant, Bella imagined she'd rather sleep than suffer Aemon's company for an evening too. But Hagrid was likely right. The fatigue of being host, arranging a royal feast, and pregnant had finally brought Ariel to her limit. The lady of the point was sent to bed, Aemon escorting her back to their apartments in the Fangs, ignoring Aegon's jeering as they passed. Still, with Hagrid too drunk, Aemon temporarily absent, and Ariel abed, everything kept running smoothly in the Great Hall. Eliza saw to it. Bela hoped Ariel was able to find a good night's rest, since more dragons arrived the following day. A blend of relief and weary irritation washed over Bela when peering out the window, to where a red, stringy dragon cut through the cloudless blue sky like a scarred wound. Caraxes flew in over the point at the turning of the noon, more dragons following in his wake. They flew past the castle to land, but Bela headed out on the balcony to keep a watch. Before long she could see a familiar group arrive through the gates, reaching the bridge of the point for their greeting, was looking around curiously. Hopefully the gods weren't punishing Hagrid for last night's indulgences too heavily. He'd need his dull wits very soon. This would surely put Hagrid to the test as well, and everyone would be made to judge how he handled hosting a castle full of royals and lands full of dragons. Knowing she wouldn't be able to delay long, Bela rose. The door hinges opened soundlessly as she passed the threshold from the balcony into hers and Aegon's chamber. They were directly underneath the king and queen for their stay, within rooms which would have been offered to Rhaenyra and her father if they'd been present. However, they'd come days too late, missing Aemon's name day, which he doubted was an accident. Regardless of what their ranks presumed suitable, Bela doubted Ariel would make them switch rooms now. Even if she had a mind to, Aemon would refuse point blank. There was little love between the brothers, but there was one thing they held mutually. They both hated their sister more than each other. She exited the chambers into the hallway, but when reaching the top step of the staircase, Bela hesitated, her foot hovering still in midair. Should she? The foot pulled back as Bela peered over her shoulder. Aegon had used it. Biting her lip, she turned on her heel, gown curling about her feet when she crossed, light as a dancer, from the stairs to the other door. There was an emblem etched on the surface with two arrows, one pointing up and the other down, locked inside a square. There was a little stand attached to the wall, where there was a red handle connected to a thin red rope. Bela lifted it up until the thread pulled taut and placed it back. She couldn't hear anything, but she knew from her tour with Eliza that the other end of the string was connected to a little bell, all the way down in the operating chamber, where the lift operators would be able to tell which floor was making the request. Bela didn't quite understand the system, but observed enough in the last couple days to surmise it worked. She reached for the door, opening it without stepping forth. Cautiously, she peered down into the shaft. They said it was the elevator shaft, the empty space that reached from the lower levels of the Fang to the highest tower of the point, where the elevator went up and down. Bela had to wait until the lifting chamber reached her level, though she could tell by the moving ropes it was already on its way. It jiggled a bit, but otherwise moved noiselessly. From appearances alone, it was hard to trust it wouldn't go terribly wrong. To prove its functionality, Aemon made Hagrid and Ariel run the lift from the bottom floor and up to the highest tower, then back down again. How effortlessly it had supported the weight of Hagrid combined with a pregnant woman convinced the king, the hand, the queen, and most of the council. but Bela was more reassured by Aemon's casual suggestion to use Hariel for demonstration. The prince was purebred dragon dung, but Bela didn't see it likely he'd risk his wife and unborn child that way if he doubted its safety. As the elevator reached her floor, it was only for Bela to find someone already occupying it. "Your Grace," Bela curtsied.
Lady Bela.
King Viserys smiled happily from within the elevator chamber, seated in his new wheelchair, with the Queen standing next to him with a distant expression, as if stuck in daydreams of better places to be.
Are you trying the elevator?
The King asked, waving her forth in encouragement. "I had a mind to, but I see it's occupied, Your Grace. I'll take the stairs to greet the princess instead." "The princess?" the Queen asked, abruptly snapped back to herself. "Yes, my stepmother has arrived at the gates, accompanied by my father, Prince Ikeris, and your daughter, Princess Helena. I could see it from our balcony."
"How delightful! We didn't hear. We've been taking the elevator,"
the King shared, eyeing the floor handles with a fondness she'd usually only see him direct at his model of old Valyria.
"We need to go meet Rhaenyra then. Step on, Lady Bela. There's room enough for everyone."
The stairs were perfectly fine. Better than fine. They were even and spacious with comfortable step heights. But she'd just been given an order from the King. Bela couldn't refuse. Smiling as if nothing would please her more, Bela joined them. She shifted in next to the wall, trying to make herself as small as possible for the illusion of some space between her and the King and Queen. They stood in awkward silence whilst the elevator began a steady descent, bringing them down without anyone needing to take a step. Bela's stomach was aflutter with butterflies, still adjusting to trusting the equipment, but she had to hide it and pretend everything was fine because of the company.
"Did you have a pleasant morning, Lady Bela?"
the King asked politely. "It was pleasant, Your Grace. Hagrid sent a batch of fresh pumpkin pie from the kitchen for Aegon and I. I still favor the blueberry pies more, but your son took a shine to these ones." "Where is Aegon?" the Queen asked. "I'm not certain. I didn't see him after he went down to the Fangs after our pies."
"That's right, we met him in the elevator,"
Viserys remarked. That had been a while ago, though. Aegon left at least a couple hours before. Bela peered over, glancing between them. Had the King and Queen just been taking the elevator up and down for the better part of the morning? And she thought her morning had been uneventful. This was the first day of their stay without any formal events to attend, and guests were free to make their own entertainment. If the King spent it on the elevator, no wonder the Queen had looked so bored. Bela knew Aegon liked the elevator too. He talked quite a bit about it the previous evening, alongside the wheelchair, the leg, the flying. Aegon found the Point a very convenient castle to get about. He hadn't had such an ease of access since before his accident. It may be more freeing still for the King. Bela looked down at her hands. After she helped him find his wayward belt that morning, Aegon had kissed her before he left. On the lips. It's not that she hadn't kissed her husband before, but it was always in public. Polite kisses, mostly to show they respected their marriage to the Queen, and to shut up the courtiers who whispered about them. But he'd never kissed her just because he felt like it. In private. She didn't know what to think about it. He was an experienced kisser, more than herself. She'd only kissed Jace a while back, as well as that handsome stablehand, but she didn't count him. He'd been a short-sighted mistake, especially in those early days when she still lacked allies at court and everyone were waiting to catch her ire. It made her wonder though. Now that Aegon could fly and was getting his life back, was he expecting more? Had his mother's speech about Aemon's accomplishments stuck with him? She knew it had come eventually. Bela couldn't make up her mind whether she'd rather beg they wait, or merely get it over with. Aegon might accept it if she asked him at the right time, but she knew he'd not be faithful. She knew his friends had brought him horse, because Bela was the one to have to take care of him before,
but she'd refuse to tend him after. She wouldn't pay him a single visit for days after, refusing to make a joke, tending at hand and foot for her cheating husband. Here she was, every day doing her best to make his life more convenient, and he was fucking hoarse. Aegon couldn't fail to notice her absence though. He'd asked what kept her away during a very awkward supper, and she told him point blank why, uncaring of their audience. You can't guess at the reason? Why, because I'm not cleaning you up after you've worked up a sweat fucking your whore? Bela snarled, making the queen drop her spoon in the soup, splashing her velvet gown with greasy stains. The king stuffed a piece of bread in his mouth, whilst the hand sighed tiredly, and then found a point of interest in the empty air outside the window. As long as you invite those tramps, why don't you request Sir Martin tend to you? I hear he's ever so dutiful to provide you exactly what you need. It had been a startling reaction. She'd even shocked herself. Because Bela knew men had needs. How could she not? She'd been reminded of it constantly for years now, and she'd certainly not provided an alternative outlet for him. Something Aegon was not shy in reminding her. 2 years wed, and you're still a maiden, and everyone knows. You faithfully kept attending the Maiden's Day for purifications. You made vows, Bela reminded him. He'd been sick too, injured, and they'd settled into a familiar routine when he'd suddenly changed without warning. I've upheld mine. Is it so impossible to ask you to do the same? Is it unfathomable to you? I'm not a fucking maester, some damn septon. I haven't had a woman in years, since before I wed, and what a fucking success that was. You complain now? How exactly have I failed you, my lord husband? I do everything for you. You do your duty, Aegon snarled. Then you should do yours. You need me. You broke me. Aegon, the king interjected. You slipped, Bela hissed. You were drunk and you slapped me around, but I still didn't push you. You were your own downfall. Have you learned nothing? Was the pain not enough? Why do you keep doing it? Viserys cleared his throat, breaking everything off with an order for peace. Bela had stormed off from the argument. However, after what Aegon called an unreasonable tantrum, he'd seemingly stopped. Or mayhaps he'd learned some discretion, though it seemed unlikely. Bela had not come across any whores, nor seen any lover's marks on his neck, or heard tales of women visiting her husband's chamber after those first two a moon ago. Who knew how long that'd last though? If Aegon wished to take his rights, it was her duty. Though if Bela tried to refuse him, he'd certainly go back to finding it elsewhere. So what was she to do? It was in their vows. In sickness and in health. There'd been a lot of sickness. How would health look? The elevator came to a stop before a closed door with the number 1 etched into it. We're here, the king said, and the queen leant around her husband, pushing the door open to reveal the entrance hall of the Fangs. What the? A familiar voice startled, and the person took a step back. She met his wide, dark eyes, and her heart skipped a beat, before beating faster. Jace had been right by the door when it swung open, and none of the newcomers were expecting the king, queen, and Bela to appear that way. Jace bowed to the king and then smiled at her. His face lit up as if the sight of her had brightened his day. Why did he have to be even more handsome than she remembered? But she smiled back, unable to help it, but then forced herself to look at Helena. Jace's betrothed had shuffled to the other side of the crowd of people where Harryl and Aemon stood. They'd flight on Dragonback, but her father, stepmother, Jace and Helena had brought along Sir Stefan, 2 servants, Lady Alinda Massey, and a babe on their dragons for the trip. Why was the king placed inside a closet? Bella's father demanded, his expression somewhere between dumbfounded and insulted as he turned on Hagrid. This is the gravest of insults. And my daughter too.
Pardon, but that's not a closet, Ariel retorted sharply. So sharply Bella could almost mistake it for anger. It's an elevator, sir. Bella snorted. Sir? Who'd ever called Prince Daemon Targaryen Sir? Strictly speaking, she wasn't wrong to use it. Her father was knighted. But it was the lesser title. A prince would always outrank a Sir. Bella glanced at Ariel. It wasn't the first time people had misunderstood something within her castle, but she'd reacted with good humor before. A what? Rhaenyra asked. It's to make it easier to bring objects up and down the castle, Aemond explained, his tone bored as he paid more attention to playing with Ariel's hand and talking to his half-sister. You can bring along heavy cargo, granted they fit within the elevator. How does that work? Daemon wondered.
Maths,
Hagrid said, smiling helplessly.
It's Mr. Irvin's calculations, but it works. They made everything lighter with a charm too, both for safety and to make it lighter for the ones operating the wheel. It worked fine before the charms too, but now it's easy.
The wheel?
It's down in the elevator chamber, and it's what makes the elevator go up and down, Hagrid said vaguely. I'm relieved we were able to make space for it. Not only to lift goods between the different levels, but people who struggle with the stairs is happy with it, such as Aegon. His wooden leg helps, but it's slow going. With an elevator he can get to any level.
You built this for Aegon? Daemon asked skeptically. Did you forget your nephew is missing a leg? Aemond wants his brother to be comfortable during visits, Ariel said. And Bella was certain now. She was not imagining the hostile lilt in her behavior. But why? Bella may have good reason to be angry at him, but what had her father ever done to Ariel? But no, it wasn't only for him. It's not only Aegon who suffered crippling. There's a fisherman who worked in the kitchen who lost his foot years back. I think Lord Larys appreciates it too, not to mention myself. I mostly take the stairs, but at the end of some days my back is killing me. Then there's His Grace, the King. What is that, father? Rhaenyra cut off her good sister mid-sentence, having noticed the new chair he sat in. What wheelchair is this? A wheelchair, the Queen said. The princess nodded. Aptly named.
It's a gift from Hagrid,
the King said. Aegon was gifted one as well, the Queen added. And
You must try the elevator, my dear.
The King spoke over his wife and directly to Rhaenyra.
Isn't it refreshingly convenient? It takes me up and down faster than anyone can take the stairs.
I've never seen anything quite akin to it, her stepmother agreed.
It's based off a Northern lift,
the King nodded sagely.
I wasn't aware they were this advanced up there in the barren north.
We also had them in my homeland too, Ariel said. Not quite the same, the lift mechanism worked differently, and it's not something we can replicate. We could run it on magic, but it needs to be functional without Hagrid and myself at hand. If we're away for a fortnight, the castle needs to be able to keep using it without us.
Isn't it fascinating?
His Grace sounded 10 years younger. Bill had always known he was interested in his model of buildings. The enormous thing in his chambers spoke a tale of its own. But mayhaps he'd always been generally interested in construction. Perhaps he should have tried building something real for the pleasure of the many, instead of using his efforts on a miniature model in his room only he alone enjoyed. King Aegon I forged the kingdom itself. King Aenys, even Maegor, created the Red Keep and the capital. King Jaehaerys connected the people of the kingdom with roads, whilst Viserys had made a model in his bedroom. Quite, Rhaenyra agreed. I sent a raven to Lord Krakenstag for assistance on how to make the elevator, Ariel said. We knew there is one at the wall, one that takes men from the steps of Castle Black to the top of the wall itself. Lord Cregan's response that he had scrolls in his library of how it was built and operated. He graciously offered to send it with the next shipment going south, but we wanted it sooner. Since it runs along the center of the castle, from the bottom to the top, we needed it right away if we were going to use it. Eamon flew there to pick up the research notes himself. He did? The princess asked. I wasn't aware the Warden of the North and Eamon sustained any friendship that held past your trip, the time you lost control of your dragon. Eamon and I oversaw that everything went smoothly whilst Lord Cregan was installed as Lord of Winterfell during his coming of age, and his regent stepped down peacefully, Ariel said, trailing off with a glance to Eamon. He was happy to send along the drawings and exchange news. His wife Ara gave birth to their first child too. Did she give him an heir then? Chase inquired. No, a girl, Eamon said, disinterested. She's 6 moons old, looking as northern as they come, and he named her Saria Stag. His uncle Bernard remains Cregan's heir until Lady Ara can give him a son. As the eldest daughter of Lord Stark, she'll make a fine match one day then, Jay said. Then Lady Saria is only a little older than my youngest, her stepmother said, smiling back to where Lady Alinda stood in the back of the room. Rhaenyra's favorite lady-in-waiting was rocking the babe tucked in pink, frilly blankets. Lord Cregan and his wife are young still, Rhaenyra said diplomatically. They'll try again, and perhaps next time he'll have an heir. Yes, Lord Stark must be proud, but I would rather see mine own granddaughter now. Where is she? Rhaenyra's smile was radiant as she turned around. The babe gave a whine and wiggled feebly whilst Alinda tried gently rocking the princess. The swaddle had loosened enough for the babe to reach for the lady-in-waiting. Alinda took her small hand in her own, expression loving. One could almost think it was her daughter, but that was just Alinda. She loved all of them like family. Lady Alinda stepped forwards and carefully handed over the youngest princess in the realm. It seemed the babe was born big, or else she'd merely grown greedily since her birth, as that was a very large 3-moon-old babe. Father, her stepmother said, mindfully placing the child in the king's lap, waiting till she was certain he had a proper hold. I'd like you to meet our daughter, Rhaenys. Bella blinked. Did she hear wrong? Did she just say Rhaenys? No, that couldn't be right. Why in the 7 hells would Rhaenyra name her daughter after the woman who disinherited Luke, making the bastard rumors worse for the strong boys to uphold the rights of the only true-born Valyrian boy amongst them? Rhaenys? Queen Alicent sounded as lost to the logic as Bella felt. After... No, Rhaenyra said with a roll of her eyes. Not after her. I wouldn't name my daughter after that turncloak. I named her after a true queen, Queen Rhaenys Targaryen. So she was named after Aegon the Conqueror's second consort, the first Rhaenys. Oh, it clicked for Bella then. Rhaenyra's oldest daughter was named Visenya, Laenor's girl, and now Rhaenyra had another younger daughter named Rhaenys as well. Would that mean if Bella's stepmother had another son, would he be named Aegon next? It sounded like something her father would love to do. Though could this get much more confusing? Bella met Harrel's eyes across the room. She looked like she'd smelled someone's farts in an enclosed space, but was too polite to point it out. Oh, Harrel had to hate this. Bella's grandmother had arranged her wedding, and they were still in contact. Besides, Harrel had made a big deal about not reusing names for her own babe, and this wasn't even to honor someone. It was spitefully reclaiming a name, a way to exclude, not include, merely switching out the old Rhaenys with a new, more malleable one. Bella wished she didn't know how that felt. She examined the babe with detached curiosity. Princess Rhaenys seemed to thrive in all the ways that mattered. A big babe and born looking as Valyrian as her older sister Visenya. Though when Rhaenys wrapped her hand around the king's finger, something felt off. It looked like a strong grip, and Bella couldn't quite put her finger on anything to give her that feeling. Bella peered at the babe's little face instead, whom she shared no noticeable similarities with,
No, Princess Rhaenys was all Targaryen without a trace of anything else. If anyone, Rhaenys looked exactly like what little Visenya had at that age. Visenya too had a striking likeness to Daemon actually, more than Bella and Rhaena, his actual daughters. Yet both of Rhaenyra's girls seemed to look just like him, despite only one being his. Huh? It lingered like an echo, faint but not something she could ignore. A thought that made something in the back of her head start to prickle, extending from her head into a shiver down her back. Surely... no. No. No, no, no! Fucking hell, no! Feeling off kilter, Bella took a step back, not that anyone noticed. They'd kept talking and were discussing something regarding Rhaenys' hands, something wrong. But it flew over Bella's head. What did it matter compared to this? Because... surely there was a limit to the number of treasons her stepmother could commit. So casually, so boldly, so insidiously consistent. Was the snake of a woman made of nothing but fucking lies? Had she no understanding of duty, of honor? Was she utterly incapable of considering the life-threatening consequences she so carelessly put her children under? Did it amuse her? Did it give her a sick thrill to birth children she then forced to live a lie? Rhaenyra seemed so loving a mother. How could she be so cruel to them? Pitting them against everyone so she may fuck at her own pleasure. This wasn't their fault. It was hers. It was all hers. And her father's. Bella tried to reclaim the thought back. Undo this horrible idea that just clicked into place with too much sense and surety. Like she'd known for a while but hadn't wanted to see. Visenya and Rhaenys, looking like full-blooded siblings, not half-siblings. Viserys looking more half-sibling to Visenya than Rhaenys did, when it should have been the opposite. Why didn't Visenya have Laenor's complexion, his curls, his... anything? Viserys did. There was an explanation for that though. The reason Visenya looked like Daemon Targaryen instead of Uncle Laenor Velaryon was because the resemblance came from Rhaenyra. Fucking lackwit! Am I going to start claiming Jace look and Joff had Baratheon hair again now? Bella chastised herself. I will not be made a gullible fool by that woman again. Bella felt nauseous. And furious. Visenya was the elder sibling of Viserys. Could it be? Had her father been committing treason fucking the princess for years, while she remained married to Bella's uncle? Had Rhaenyra been having sex with Laenor's husband, was passing the child of their affair on as Laenor's child? Was attempting to usurp House Velaryon not enough for Rhaenyra? I can tell she'll grow into a graceful and perfect little princess, just like her mother, the king gushed. Rhaenyra beamed, taking her daughter back from the king's lap. Bella looked from Jace's strong features and compared him to the last she saw of Visenya, who looked a mirror of Daemon Targaryen, just like little Rhaenys. Jace and Visenya were born a decade apart. It wasn't some mistake, it was a witless choice. What was wrong with her? The heir to the throne chose to ignore the laws of the kingdom. Was her head so full of straws she felt untouchable, placing herself above having to follow honor, duty, oaths, or consequences, above even the privileges of previous kings, and spitting on the words of the gods? Seeing as Rhaenyra never stopped the treasons, Bella would say fuck no. The princess didn't even care how this affected her kids. If she'd cared, she'd have stopped after Jace. But here they were. Jace had to marry Helena for duty. Aegon had to marry Bella for duty. Rhaena had to marry Luke for duty. But Rhaenyra, the woman who was supposed to govern the laws of Westeros one day, what did she have to do for duty? How could anyone delude himself into thinking she'd make a good queen, to stand in judgment of others when she herself had no fucking clue what it meant to uphold the law, what it took.
How dare she?
Bella knew this was the heir to the throne, but how fucking dare she? How dare she do this to Jace, to Luke, Joff, and Visenya? How dare she do this to Bella? She'd been one of the ones to happily push Bella to marry Aegon, but why had it been necessary? It was because there was a rift in House Targaryen which she created and maintained. Because Rhaenyra felt it was her due to be the most precious princess of them all, the realm's delight. Had it escaped her notice, she was no longer that maiden of 6 and 10. None except the king thought Rhaenyra a delight anymore. What a joke. The only title Rhaenyra actually earned of her own merit was as the realm's disgrace. Because Rhaenyra had been given so many chances, more than anyone else in the entire realm combined, men and women alike. And what had she done with them? After Laenor died, she could have married Aegon and united the family, for duty and the realm. Yet Rhaenyra couldn't be bothered. No, that was too tall an ask. Better make Bella do it in her stead. It fell to Bella to mend Rhaenyra's house, fulfill Rhaenyra's duties, and live her entire life in service to cover up each treason Rhaenyra committed. Then, they had the audacity to call her ungrateful, even treasonous, for calling the arrangement unjust. Bella was a dragon rider, and she had the blood of Aegon the Conqueror too. She didn't deserve this blatant disrespect from her own kin, their shameless, endless lying. This wasn't about duty. It wasn't about family. It was about Rhaenyra being an honorless, stupid shrew, and everyone else were ordered to act her puppets. And to what end? She had no taste for duty, for responsibility or ruling. When it got tough, Rhaenyra fled. She abandoned her duties at the small council, and ever since all Rhaenyra fancied was lazing about at Dragonstone, leaving court, house and realm to collapse into a crater, whilst caring not about anything but fucking! With such priorities, she really was her brother's sister. And her father. Should there not be boundaries to the number of lies her father could trick her with? Did he believe his daughter an utter lackwit? An empty-headed fool like his wife? He should have told Bella she had a fucking sister. For 4 years! All those days on Dragonstone when she'd take care of Visenya, Daemon would call Visenya Velaryon their cousin, even as he treated the girl with the same amount of patience he would Bella and Rhaena, a patience he didn't have for the boys. She thought it was because Visenya was a princess, a girl, that he would have told her that much. He owed her that much. They'd made Bella complicit in the treasons, making her one of her puppets parroting Rhaenyra's lies, making Bella look an idiot. And still she played Rhaena the same, pitting her against her own kin, against the Velaryons, against their own mother's blood. Her grandmother had been right. Of everyone in this cursed house, she'd been the only one to try and warn her, to open her eyes. And Bella hadn't answered a single one of her letters since, all because her father, her lying, treasonous father, ordered her not to. Not out of regard for Bella's safety, but in behalf of his precious Rhaenyra. "Do you want to meet your little sister, Bella?" Rhaenyra asked affectionate, as if she gave a damn whether Bella approved, as if she had any concern for family, as if she gave a fuck about what happened to any of them. No. With a disgusted sneer, Bella turned on her heel. "Bella!" her father called. She didn't heed him. Bella dashed through the castle, too upset to have a clear idea where to go, but not familiar enough to know where to go even if she did. Just not back, anywhere else but wherever they happened to be. Her feet carried her away. She marched right into a dead end, backtracked, and scurried further along a stretching corridor where she suddenly recognized the way to the courtyard. She grabbed the handle and swung the door open with too much force. Bela was so full of heat. It was licking at her chest, in the back of her throat, as if she was no longer wearing the skin of a silly, discarded girl of 4 and 10, but was a dragon about to spew fire. She'd feared they gave up on her with her marriage to Aegon, a match they had pushed her into despite her protests, placing her there and expecting her to spy for them, even as the Queen and Hand and even her husband weren't idiots. They knew perfectly well she was a spy placed there to hold Aegon in check. But no. It didn't start with Aegon at all. It went so much further back. Visenya was 2 when she married Aegon, and they hadn't told her they were sisters. They still kept playing Bela for a fool to this very moment. No. This had been happening since she was born. They'd never been in her corner to begin with. She'd never mattered. She hated them. She loved them. She hated that they didn't love her the way she'd proved to love them. That she tried so fucking hard, gave up so much, for people who didn't seem to spare a thought for her at all. The sun twinkled overhead, bathing the ground in its glow. The bushes rustled on a light breeze. The row of flowers made everything smell fresh and wonderful. The gardener was working diligently in the soil on a new flower bed. Surely it'd be as lovely as everything else here once done. If she was a dragon, she could have burnt it all in a blink. Bela drew her blade, eyes for the nearest tree, and lashed out. With a dull thunk it sunk into the bark, the polished, shiny, sharp edge of her moonstone dagger perfectly cutting into the bark. It had been given to her by her father after marrying Aegon. He'd placed it in her hand, whilst he took the rest of her life and brought it back to Dragonstone, leaving her behind with his little gifts for her troubles. She had half a mind to leave it there, leave it stuck in the tree, maybe toss it in the waterfall. She yanked it out and stabbed again, and again and again and again. She wanted the blade to break. She wanted it to stop being shiny and perfect, to reflect the jagged edges, for the gemstones to crack, to reveal the uselessness it truly was. What the fuck could a knife do against dragons? It was an illusion. Take it. Isn't it pretty? Doesn't it make you feel safe? Because your father can't be bothered. He'd sooner feed you to a dragon and face the heat himself. Bela? Go away, Ariel! Are you well? Do I look well? Bela snapped, wrenching the knife free from the trunk and waving it about. Ariel stopped a couple steps away. Leave! Of course she couldn't ever do what Bela asked of her. Even the simplest thing, Ariel didn't. The stupid naive idiot stayed. She just stood there, staring at her with those big green doe eyes, her expression uncertain and round as a barrel. Such a glaring target. For a mad instant, Bela imagined plunging the knife into her belly instead, but recoiled by her violent fantasy. I am holding a knife, stabbing a tree. What about this makes you think it's a good time to approach me, Ariel? Have you no sense for survival at all? Did the babe suck out your remaining wits? Leave me be! Please, as if you could hurt me. Bela whirled on her, eyes flashing, ready for a fight and expecting to see the wand aimed directly at her face. She wanted it. Give me battle. Give me another type of pain. A wound across my skin to point to. Proof of injury that can't be dismissed as my imagination. But Ariel only tilted her head up, jaw jutting out in a wordless challenge, as if that was threatening. She still had her hands folded, no wand or weapon out. So defenseless, like a slow-minded doe, thinking the dragon wouldn't spew fire. You're a fool,
Bella hissed. What happened there, Bella?
I don't want to talk about it!
That's fine. We don't need to talk, she said, a hand rubbing over her stomach. Do you honestly wish to stay here? Bella cast a glance around. The gardener was staring, and there in the window, another servant. Tears of rage and shame pressed against her eyes. What should she care what they think? She was a dragon! Right? If she was, how come the other dragons kept pushing her around, treating her like some discardable tool, as if she was a fucking doe in the dragon den? Who was she to them? Would you come with me? Let's go somewhere else. You could bring the knife too. If you want to cut, I know a better use for it. Bella followed Ariel through the castle, avoiding sight of any silver hair on their way down to the fangs. Except a couple silver-haired boys. The taller one ran past them, waving a wooden stick, but the smallest stopped briefly, smiling toothfully at Ariel as they passed. Afternoon, Gaiman. Are you having fun? The boy nodded eagerly and then ran after the other. I should make a playroom. Ariel looked after them. An indoor one, for all the kids living here. A what? Bella asked. For when it rains or winter, Ariel mused. With swings and other things to play with. They usually play outside, but there'll be days that's not feasible. They get so energetic when stuck inside. Wasn't that the son of a staff? Bella asked. One of Elisa's. Ariel looked at her, startled. No, I mean the other one is, the one he's playing with is Elisa's boy. But he's... She bit her lip. Gaiman is my nephew. This time it took her but a moment to make it click. Oh, right. She'd always known he had children, and Bella had heard something about Hagrid fostering the bastards here at the Point. Any other day this would have been cause for upset. But now, this moment... Aegon's... Ariel nodded. Bella exhaled shakily. Perfect. This was too much. She couldn't make herself any more upset than she already was. Someone had to take care of him. It was better here than at court. If anything, what bothered Bella wasn't his presence. It was only that... The little bastard just had to be adorable, didn't he? Ariel brought her to a side chamber near the kitchens in the Fangs. It had its own fireplace, but only a tiny window, and a round chair and table. It's not often used, Ariel said. We thought of using it as a break room for the staff, but they spend it elsewhere, so it's become a blend of things. Storage, tea room, break room, somewhere to take a break from your husband for an hour. Bella snorted. Eamon doesn't go to the kitchens? He goes to the kitchens, Ariel said. He doesn't always check the break rooms. Ariel went over the barrel of big orange pumpkins and picked out 2. They're from Hagrid's harvest, Ariel said, placing them on the table. The pies tasted very good. Don't worry, it was Baker Ebbert who made the pies, not Hagrid. He just grows the pumpkins for Ebbert to make into edible, delicious treats. Bella smiled weakly. They're enormous. They were even bigger back home, but these are big ones too. The secret is in the fertilizer. Bella hummed, eyeing it skeptically, especially when Ariel found a cutting board and a knife for herself. You expect me to cut pumpkin pies for Baker Ebbert's pies now? She asked drolly. Is this some cruel and unusual punishment for vandalizing your tree? No, it's to carve faces, Ariel said. Whose face are we carving up then? Bella asked, brow lifting. Ariel spluttered.
No, not a person, a pumpkin, like that one. She pointed to the shelf, to something Bella had already noticed. The big pumpkin with a surprised face. It was carved to hold an expression of permanent startlement. Hagrid and I did that one, Harry said. I'll talk Eamon into joining us someday too. He said he didn't want to, but I think he'll come to change his mind. Why? When the babe is older, we could do it together, Harry said wistfully. Bella sighed, but couldn't deny the idea of cutting something with purpose was tempting. The wild stabbing had gotten the worst of her violent aggression out. Now she wanted to cause pointed, precise damage instead. She looked at the pumpkin, her next victim. This could work. They set to work, passing the time ignoring what brought them here in favor of light chatter about pumpkins. Ariel used the fireplace to make them a kettle of tea, and then they set to pulling out the guts and seeds from their respective pumpkins. It was messy, ripping the guts through a hole where they'd cut away the stem. It stained her fingers and hem of her sleeves, making her hands look like they were covered in orange blood, before she had a mind to pull up her sleeves to try save it. But Harriel had magic. She'd mend it later, she knew. Then they went about drawing their designs for the faces. Ariel went first, showing how to map it, and then Bella took her cue from that and added her own ideas to it, making the smile wider, more sinister and toofier. Bella was probably only giving herself far more work, but she didn't mind the distraction. They sat down on opposite ends of the round wooden table, sipping tea with guts and seeds and pumpkin flesh around them. They started carefully on the first few cuts, but once she got the hang of it, Bella leant into it. It was certainly easier than embroidery. She'd always found that knives rested more comfortably in her grip than needles. Bella was carefully drawing her dagger along the grinning mouth, shaping the contours of a sharp tooth, when Harriel brought up the dragon in the barn. I know you don't wish to talk about it, but I just want to say, I don't think it looked to harm your sister much, she said, almost conversationally. All things considered, I don't think it that noticeable. I didn't even catch it at first. It looks normal enough if you don't count. Bella frowned, distracted from her work. She felt calmer, but still didn't want to talk about it, but that had not made sense to her. One never knows what traits a babe may be born with. Sometimes nature just works in mysterious ways. Though admittedly such unusual appendages may be more expected from family lines with excessive incest. At least that's how it was in Britain. Your father and the princess are uncle and niece. Though the important part is that she's healthy. You'll get used to it. Huh? Bella had no clue what was happening here. What are you talking about? Harry looked up from atop her pumpkin hesitantly. Renice? The younger Renice? Your sister? The babe's wrong? Bella asked, because that sure as hell was what it sounded like. Not wrong, that's too harsh a definition, Ariel rushed to say, reflexively placing a hand on her stomach, as if it was the one Bella had talked about. She's grown well. She seemed energetic and healthy. You saw that, didn't you? I thought the reason you left was because of her hands. Why would her hands offend me to do that? Ariel didn't answer. Why? What's the matter with her hands? She's got 12 fingers, Ariel replied slowly. Didn't you hear us talk about it there? See them. She's got 6 fingers on each hand. It looked like you didn't quite think that was acceptable? Bella burst out laughing. Oh, the irony. So the little princess came out wrong. Bella thought there was something off with the hand, but hadn't thought to count the fingers. The gods did like to punish Rhaenyra's children for her treason, didn't they? First bastards, now this. If only they'd aim their displeasure on the sinner instead of the people around her, Bella's life would be so much easier.
She does? Bella asked between giggles. It escaped my notice. Oh. Harold had gone very red and uncomfortable. You think a couple fingers too much would cause me such upset? As if I haven't been around worse. Have you seen the state of the king? I saw Aegon's amputated leg bloody and raw, right after it was cut off. I've treated his stump since. It's almost suitable. I have a husband with too few body parts and a half-sister with too many. Bella shook her head. So that wasn't why? Harold clarified. No. The witch pursed her lips, her expression bewildered, but she picked up her knife and continued cutting. Bella tried to do the same, making a few more adjustments to the fanged grin, then wondered whether she should start cutting out the final eye to match the other instead, but her hands were fidgety with unreleased restlessness. Had Harriel let it go? Would she not ask for clarification then? Was she afraid to? Or was she biding her time again, readying to spring the topic on her later? I've done everything they demanded of me. The words were wrenched from her throat, her gaze going blurry. Yet they've never done anything demanded of them. They pretend to, put on a mama show for the courtiers, but they lie. Reckless flurry bubbled through her blood, and Bella slashed down hard, ruining her pumpkin as it sunk clean through the flesh. And when others notice they've skirted their duty, they lie some more, blame it on others, and then fools me into lying for them too, ordering me to fix what they broke, claiming it's my duty and we must all do our parts, just as they do theirs. Fucking liars. As if this is for the well-being of the family. If the whole family means only my stepmother alone, that's true. She's the one breaking everything she touches, and everyone else's purpose in life is to clean up for her. Bella rambled, the words spilling out and likely making little to no sense to Harriel. But she couldn't stop her the flood. It needed to be said. She needed to be heard. I'm but a rag to clean up their wrecks. How am I even supposed to accomplish that when they refuse to stop ruining stuff? I cleaned up one mess only to find 10 more they've been spilling. You know, I'd like to have something more to my life than be yanked by the strings like a mindless puppet. That I may desire to have some happiness of my own. I don't have time. It's all about their happiness, their greed. They've made it perfectly clear that mine well-being is inconsequential. So no, it's not about some stupid fingers. I wish it was. Bella glared at Harriel's stricken expression. She was so naive. She had no idea. Kept so out of the loop she'd not caught half of what had been happening. Just like Rhaena. It probably didn't even make sense to her. She hadn't been around in so long, hadn't seen... I know, Harriel said. You don't deserve that. You didn't deserve any of it. It's not fair they made you and Aegon pay for their mistakes. To make you mend the fractions in House Targaryen when all they contributed is making the task harder. When they know perfectly well this was not how you envisioned your life would turn out. I'd be furious. I was. I am. For you. Every barrier cracked. First a little, then the pressure spilled through, tearing it apart. There was no holding the tidal wave back. It crashed over her, so violent and sudden. The tears brimming over and flooding over her cheek. So harsh and uncontrollable, Bella could do nothing but turn away, hiding her face even as her body shook with it. She couldn't cry. She wasn't allowed to show displeasure. They were always watching for weakness. But fuck! She couldn't stop it. Couldn't help it. Bella cried and cried. She didn't even know for how long. Only that when she finally regained some semblance of control, her eyes were raw, her throat hurt, her nose snotty and runny, and surely she looked horrendous. and Ariel sat in silence, seeing everything. It only made her cry harder. Eventually it came to an end. It had to.
You shouldn't have seen that.
Bella sniffed. She kept drying her eyes, wishing the evidence could be magicked away. But asking was too much like an admission of helplessness. Hadn't she proved herself pathetic enough today?
It's fine,
Ariel said softly.
No.
Bella shook her head. Nothing was fine. She'd cried herself dry, feeling emptied and hollow. Not just a rag anymore, but a rag wringed and squeezed, leaving a wrinkly, dry, limp thing behind. And yet, as uncomfortable as she was, as horrendous and embarrassing as crying was to do before anyone, mayhaps Bella felt slightly lighter too. It was as if Bella had wrung out gallons of the negativity, grief and injustice and hate and fear. So many bad feelings weighing her down. She was left a curled up lump now, pathetic and wrinkled. But still, that was a lighter lump. She'd need to stretch out, find her way back to shape, and find it lighter and cleaner. I won't tell, Ariel promised, shuffling her pumpkin on the table. After building for a year and a half, you're not actually the first breakdown of frustrated tears I've seen. Building can bring out strong emotions and frustrations in people. You'd be surprised. Bella's mouth twitched up. It wasn't that funny, but she appreciated Ariel's awkward attempt at lighting her spirit and making her feel as if what just happened was normal. The promise helped too. You know, you've kept up stronger than I'd have been, Bella, Ariel said frankly. About everything. I'd have broken down years ago. I'd be so angry if they put me in your shoes. Besides, I'd probably have thrown Aegon out a window within a fortnight stuck with him, and made everything worse for myself. Bella giggled, a pathetic little squeak, and she had to cough to clear her throat. You're one to talk. You're married to Aemond, she grimaced. Had I been stuck with him, I'd have thrown myself out the window. Bella reached down for her pumpkin, wrinkling her nose at the mess she'd made of it when she lodged her knife into it. She snorted. I killed my pumpkin. She'd had time to carve the mouth and one eye before it became the victim of her moonstone dagger. The blade stood pierced clean into the orange head, only the handle sticking out where she had planned for the other eye to be. Nah, it was an accident. You blinded it. Ariel shrugged. Say it's a pirate pumpkin, then it appears like it's on purpose. A helpful piece of life advice, Ariel. This is not mere blinding, Bella said dryly. If you are ever so unfortunate to suddenly be faced with someone swinging a knife at your eye, then they intend to kill you. They're going for the head. Ariel smiled wryly. Right. That knife is probably lodged in the brain, isn't it? What brain? Bella asked, gesturing to the guts they'd left in the bowel. We removed its wits. It's over there. Ariel chuckled. They lapsed into a silence, not as strained, as Ariel turned her pumpkin, starting to correct the shape of her own pumpkin eye. Bella didn't follow. She reached for her tea instead, taking a sip of the cold-flavored water. How long had she cried? She drank the rest in one gulp and placed the cup on the table, studying the tea leaves, piled into an indistinguishable shape at the bottom. I hate her, Bella shared in a whisper, turning the cup. Ariel knew better than to ask who she was. It was likely something she could guess rightly. She twisted her cup around on its head. From that angle, it almost looked like a sun sinking on the horizon. Or maybe it was rising. Dawn or dusk. End or start. Perhaps it was neither. Mayhaps it was a crown, atop a slightly flat head. I tried not to. I tried to aim it elsewhere at first, but I just do. It always comes back to her. She's ruining my house, both of them. She's ruining my family, my life, dividing the realm, and then feigns innocence and confusion. I hate her. The words were a horrible truth, and mayhaps unfair to put on Hariel, but it couldn't be taken back now. It was finally spoken into reality. It was a relief, a weight off her chest making her breathe easier. It was a hate that had been eating at her too long. Her grandmother had been right. Rhaenyra was neither worthy nor capable of the privileged station she'd supplanted. She could do naught but accomplish witless mistakes, mistakes that had set the realm on fire. It was ridiculous, outright foolishly incompetent, and so cruel. The king was cruel. What else could it be? What else could explain it? Especially when the solution was so obvious, before everyone's eyes and reach. Yet the king refused to acknowledge the only way to solve it. The laws had been perfectly clear for thousands of years, and they had not changed. The king's very own laws made it his birthright. Aegon should be king, and Bela the queen.